My name is Dr. Messi. I'm a pediatric doctor, and I love to talk about sleep in children because, well, we all know that sleep is really important for their health. And, well, when children don't sleep very well, it affects the whole family and everybody is stressed. So, today we're talking about something really simple actually, the bedroom, and how we can make the children's bedrooms good for sleep. So, we where a child sleeps is really important for them to get a restful night sleep. If your child is sleeping in an environment that is not comfortable for them, or that is not conducive for a good night's sleep, then they might fall asleep easily, or they might find it difficult, but they're probably not to be well rested. So, and you might find it really difficult for them to settle, and they might take a bit longer. So, what are the things that we can do to make the bedrooms more conducive to sleep? None of these things I'm going to talk about are big. Small changes for a big improvement is what we're looking at. So, first off, light. So, it's ideal to have a darkened bedroom, and you can achieve this with blackout blinds or blackout curtains, and generally trying to reduce artificial light. If your child likes to have a light in the room, some children are at least scared of the dark, and it's important to acknowledge that fear. But what you can do, instead of them having the bright LED light that's on either their bedside or the one above, you can provide them with red light. So red light has been shown to not have that impact of reducing the production of melatonin, which is the hormone that you need in order to feel sleepy. When there is bright light, just like in the daytime, we feel more awake in the day, because when you're subjected to bright light, the brain recognizes that it's time to wake up, and therefore the production of the sleep hormone is suppressed, and you feel more awake. So having a dim or dark bedroom, or with a red light by the side, if that's what the child needs, then this can help to make sure that that production of melatonin is at its optimum, and then they'll sleep better. Secondly, temperature. So if your child is in a room which is really cold or too hot for them, then they will also struggle to sleep. We know that the body's temperature needs to go down a little bit when it's time to sleep. So a hot room will definitely cause a problem. If it's too cold as well, then your child is bound to wake up. So the ideal temperature sits between 16 to 20 degrees. So you might find you need to do other things in order to help them to have that ideal temperature. For example, if it's in the summer, some people have bought these cool gel pads for the pillow, where the child might lie on that, and then just that might just help them to cool down a little bit, and that can help them to settle a bit better. If you've got heating in the house, you want to make sure that it's switched off well before it's time to go to bed, because then the rooms are not too hot by the time the children are going up to sleep. So it's really important to think about that. What is the type of bedding that they have? Apart from the bedding being able to provide sufficient warmth or coolness depending on the weather where you are, the bedding also needs to be comfortable for your child. Some children are quite sensitive. Either they've got sensitive skin, or they're just generally sensitive from a sensory sort of perspective. And particularly if you've got, if they're neurodiverse, or what I mean by that is maybe they might have, say, ASD, and we know that children who are autistic can tend to have sensory issues. So if your child has got sensory issues, and or they're just sensitive, some children are just like that. They might like wearing trousers that are a bit soft, or they don't like these zips that catch and things like that. So if your child is sensitive, just make sure that their bedding is comfortable for them. This will look differently for everybody. Some might like to have linen that is really cool, so when they go to bed they feel the coolness. Some prefer it a bit warmer, some prefer it a bit soft. So it's just working with your child. And also, what are they wearing to bed? Are they wearing pajamas that they are comfortable with? If they don't like feeling seams in the clothes, for example, then they might find that really uncomfortable and struggle to fall asleep. Then clutter. So some bedrooms are, we love our children and we buy lots of toys for them, but you probably don't want to have all of these things in their bedroom, because the bedroom needs to be sleep environment. If you need to have toys because there's nowhere else to put them in the room, then you probably need to think about how you store them so they're not thrown about everywhere. A cluttered bedroom is not going to be very good for sleep. So you want to declutter or make sure that everything is its own place. If you've got a young child and there are toys in the room and you've put them to bed and you leave the room, there is a high chance that they might get up and start to play. So you also want to think about what toys they've got access to, particularly if they're younger and prone to getting out of bed and playing once it's time to sleep. Then the big one is going to be screens. So the bedroom really needs to be a screen-free zone. So evidence is clear that actually having a screen in the room, for example in the form of a TV, can contribute to reduced sleep per night, even when this TV is not being watched. I know it sounds a bit crazy, but that's actually just that's what has come out when studies have been done. So having that TV in that room, whether it's because the child might watch it for a bit longer than they might have done if it was in a separate room or not, but the issue is having screens in the room predisposes children to having harder times settling down for sleep, and then they might end up taking longer to fall asleep. And once they get into that cycle, it can become really difficult to break it. So you really want the room to be screen free. This also includes phones, computers, laptops, and all of those things. If you're able to just have them out of the room, if they've got a phone that they communicate with their friends or they do their schoolwork on, just make sure that there's a time where you cut it off. We've talked about it in another video about how it's important to have an hour before bedtime when it's a screen-free time for your child, for them to engage in other activities, reading, maybe drawing, journaling, if that's what they like to do, something that's more calmer and does not involve screens because of the light emission and also how it stimulates the brain. So making sure that it's screen-free. You might be asking, well, actually, my child's bedroom is where he does his homework. She's got a desk, and that's where her computer is, and therefore she needs to be able to do her work. There's nowhere else in the house for her to do homework or for him to sit and do his gaming, for example, in the time that he can do that. So that's okay, because, well, we live our lives the way we live our lives. But what you might want to then do in that case is make the bed a screen-free zone. So if you have to have the screens in the room because there's nowhere else to have them, or that's what works for your family, then make sure that if they've got a desk which is allocated for the screen, it might be it a laptop or a TV, if you have to have a TV. But I would really say, as long as there's a TV also in the house, TVs really should not be in the bedroom. It's very clear. So, but if you have a laptop in the room because that's where they do their work, or a computer, then have it on a desk up away from the bed, so that when they finish doing their work and it's time for bed, they are moving away. So it's essentially just a question of zoning in the room and just demarcating the space to ensure that either the whole bedroom itself is completely dedicated to sleep, or at least the bed is dedicated to sleep. And this will help your child to recognize that it's time to sleep, and then they might find it easier to settle down and have a more restful sleep through the night. Then you could personalize the room as well, thinking about what they like, so it feels more personal to them. But that's really it comes down to personal choice, really. Sometimes some children need to share and all of that. But I think important things are the lighting in the room needs to be dark, the room needs to be decluttered at the right temperature. 16 to 20 degrees is ideal, the right bedding for your child, and the bedroom needs to be a screen-free zone. And try some of this and see how it works for you. And if it does or it doesn't, please leave a comment and let me know. And remember to like the video if you found this useful, comment, and also subscribe. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye.